And this talk is about the Universal Gateway chapter. The Universal Gateway chapter is part of the Lotus Sutra, which people have been studying. I have studied the Lotus Sutra at other times, not this term because I had other things I was doing, and I can only handle so much at a time, but it is one of the main chapters of the Lotus Sutra, and also we chant it. We chanted it at Dharma Rain, which is my root temple for maybe 20 years or so. And we chant it here in the morning if you come in the morning. So one of the stories that I'm going to use will be just an excerpt because it's really way too long to use in a talk. But one of the stories will be the Universal Gateway chapter. And it is a tribute, actually, to the practice of loving kindness and compassion, which is more difficult than we would think. I don't know that we always have a high regard for kindness and the practice of kindness, so as respectful as we do, for wisdom or other things that are a part of our daily life. And up on this side is Avalokiteshvara, because I use all the different names because I don't know why. I like them at different times. But Avalokiteshvara is a little bit spiky. It's a male emanation of Kuan Yin, or the Bodhisattva of Compassion. For those of you who don't know, a Bodhisattva is an awakening being. We are practicing to be Buddhas or enlightened for the sake of all beings. And Kuan Yin is out in the front as you walk in, and that is the female Chinese emanation of the Bodhisattva of Compassion. And you also have Kanzeon, which is what we called her at Dharma Rain, and that is the Japanese Kannon and Kanzeon. There are other names as well, but those are the three main ones. And I use them interchangeably. I'm not really sure why, just kind of worked out that way. I have 3 stories. There are a couple of things that I wanted to mention first. Questions that have come up actually from classes that I've done, and also discussions about compassion that we had at Azazenkai, and Anyu did a discussion about the Bodhisattva practice before we did the moon ceremony, the new moon ceremony or the dark moon ceremony, the atonement. And just questions about embracing all beings and why that's not the easiest thing in the world. And I'm sure everyone has a reason why they know that it's not the easiest thing in the world. So the first thing that I want to say is about the kayas and the Sambhoga kaya. And the Lotus Sutra is an expression of the imaginal world, and the Bodhisattvas are an expression of imaginal beings. And the Huayan that I taught 2 years ago also is an expression of this Sambhoga Kaya realm. We all live in the Nirmana Kaya, this world here, and there is no other place to be. But the Sambhoga Kaya is this realm or an expression of difference and sameness. And the reason that it's important is because it is about interconnection. And it is about, interrelationship. It is how things are and or not. And so that has to be expressed to some degree in very imaginative terms, because we're saying that something is here and it is kind of bottomless in a way, or groundless in a way. And the point of it, why it's so important, is because without that aspect of practice, we tend to take the Nirmanakaya, or the world we live in day to day, and the Dharmakaya, the practice of meditation, too literally. We either get stuck in existence, or we get stuck in emptiness. And so the practice, or the acknowledging, this intermediate realm that kind of is, it kind of synthesizes, it kind of creates a synthesis between both the the world we know, the world of phenomena, that we recognize things, that's a tree, and that's a gate, and this is I'm Shin'ei, and these things we recognize, and meditation practice, which is kind of, this practice of silence and letting go. So I just wanted to say that because, and there is a fourth kaya, Svabhavika kaya, and that is that they are all one, they are all simultaneous, they all come up together, and we kind of can have different viewpoints or different ways of looking at the same world, this very world, and we look at it a little bit differently, and that helps give a very, very well-rounded way of living, or a better rounded. And some of us are a little more in one than the other, but we all should be at least somewhat open to the imaginal realms as well, and how imagination helps us actually be more grounded in the everyday world that we live in, and more truthful, more real, actually. So that is just something I felt was important to say. Also, that I've identified for this talk 4 categories, places where I practice, and one of the categories is a category of judgment, and that takes place in what we called it Dharma Rain Karma relationship, and that's your daily active life with people and things, events, and persons, and this difficult area of objects, or what we call more would be labels, problem with labels than objects themselves, and also this self and other, and all these divisions that we are very, very capable of creating, how the conscious mind works, separating and discriminating. So judgment and zazen, because the Universal Gateway actually is, about zazen. It is the one gateway, the one body, and how all of these practices come together to give you a sense of freedom, or give you a sense in your life of how we are actually always free, no matter what's happening to us. And the third one is the hearing, our ability to hear well, and that would be both the quality of judgment and zazen together, and I'll explain that in a moment. Judgment is, I think, really difficult, and it's difficult because we grow up in a home, we go to school, we have a job, and some way that the culture we live in, its ideas affect us in the very basis of where we live. And judgment can be difficult because it can be seen as the very person that I am. And so in working with what I'm going to call habit energy, and my own life, I had kind of always been living with, not so much anymore, kind of a ticking bomb in my head, based on, I guess, judgments and ways that I had learned to function in my family, and just growing up in a very difficult family situation, and other things that followed. And so I'm going to say a few things about working with a judgment, and because I think it needs special attention, the day-to-day work of the heart, and I think that it takes place in the world. It's not really all that real in a way, because it's many times based in what I like and what I don't like. And what I like and don't like is very different from what someone else likes and doesn't like. So a lot of these dualities are really in some way contrived. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I do in the practice, and in the main thing that I do is really I don't do very much of anything, and that's what makes it so hard when something comes up for me and I notice a contraction. And for me, it has been many years in my life. It was all over the place, and really very damaging. And now it is kind of really almost down to nothing. Not perfect, but pretty well understood. And so all I do is notice. I notice that something is up for me and that I'm caught up in something, and usually a pattern. You want to see through the pattern, and usually the pattern is over years. If you're watching, it's very, very clear, and usually we only have one pattern, one particular thing. There can be many different ways of looking at it, but it usually has one particular thing that, for me, creates this trigger or this urge to react in certain circumstances, certain conditions. So what I do is I just notice. That's what I just notice. Okay, I know that I'm caught, and I know that something's up for me, and then I just work to stay, to stop, to resist that urge, to try and do anything about it. You can get really very, very good at this, to be at peace, even though something is happening around you. And many times I will write poetry, or I will paint. If I'm in pain, I will, put that pain into my painting or into writing. And many times I will just stay still. And I'm endlessly amazed and how what seems to be really a problem, many times if you stay, you are looking back, you are stepping into what is called wisdom or clarity and insight. And what to me seemed like this is surely a problem, many times ends up not being very much of a problem at all. I always I've learned to examine my place in any issue that comes up. So I'm never so sure that it's this other person or this thing that is a problem. Many times it is really just my reaction or my response to a particular thing that's happening. And once I stay and I wait, and I can go for a walk, and I get underneath, I work, stay with the space that things move through. So you get underneath all of the conversation, because it's really the conversation, the spinning out, that can create a disaster, actually a catastrophe. So it really is that. You want to get underneath it. If you can't do that, and I can say personally, it took me many, many years to be able to stay still with a place that is a trigger for me. And if you can't, that's okay. You just keep working to come back. You work endlessly to come back to be able to remain still. And, you learn. If you attempt to repress and not look at it, ignore it, or if you spin out, the reason it's not really a good thing to do is because if I'm distracted, or if I don't want to look at these things, I can't learn anything about it. And the learning about it, and that's just in the noticing and in the staying still. And in that staying still, amazingly, I think because we are already Buddha and there's really nothing we have to do, amazingly, the thing just moves on. And you may have to go and take care of something, but the way that you'll take care of it will be very, very different than when you're running out there or doing something and you are attached. And I can't say how important, because I've been working almost 28 years and I'm still learning about this. And if you don't see through the pattern, you really are helpless. In something invisible, kind of taking over or moving you in directions that you had no intention to move in. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared this with people. And we have no control over what comes up. And so there's no good or bad about anything that comes up for us. But we do have a say about how we respond. And so slowly, karma is, for me, it's in the body. And because it's in the body, it is a very, very slow process. And I have enjoyed the slowness of it because it has given me a rich and meaningful life. And I say, too, that this thing in my head, this mean guy in my head, and because I'm feminine, the masculine is probably a little more difficult for women, so that's why it's male. But I would say that we can say that this is a negative, but in truth, this has given me, it has kept me true. It has pointed me, if you are working towards what is this, what's happening, and you are oriented toward Buddha, and you take these troubles and difficulties as kind of messengers that point you back toward a practice or toward Buddha or toward wherever you would like. If you point towards that place, then it kept me, and I'm talking about all of my life in all of the different ways in which I have approached this dilemma that I have been. It kept me true. It gave me a meaningful way of being in the world, and it gave me my life as an artist, and it actually really gave me a whole lot of joy. So so it's not really a complaint. It's not that I enjoy it or that I would say we shouldn't do anything about it, but the truth of it is you really can't label it as good or bad. It just is something that really you need to get to know. So, and what I have written here is working through our entanglements with and through each other, working with our complex interior otherness and our particular place with our world, which can be good and true, regardless of how it appears to other people. We can follow, this difficulty has been my guide. It has been actually, a mentor in a way, and it has pointed me toward a very, very particular kind of success, my own path and my own success. Form of success. So it doesn't matter how it looks to the world. Your practice is personal, it's really yours, and the choices can be quite complicated and difficult. And they may not be what anyone else agrees with. So you really have to develop a lot of strength. But without moving through this shadow area or depth or darkness, you really can't relate through compassion and care for other people. How I know myself, how I know all the greed, hate, and delusion within my own being is the way I can embrace other people when they are struggling. I know how hard it is, and so it makes me less willing to point fingers at anyone else when they are struggling, whether they know or they don't know. So I just wanted to make sure I said that, because if you're meditating and you're not learning to do this, you're not learning to see through the particular pattern that you are, if you're not really, kind of understanding that, then the practice is not really true in a complete sense. And we all have very, very different ways to go about this, but this is a main thing that makes a difference and makes a really full and beautiful life. And I think I have never had any regrets, and I've never been disappointed and in the practice itself, no matter how difficult and humiliating or uncomfortable it has been. So I just wanted to make sure that I said this. The second, so that is judgment and, this tension between this person that I am and my relationship in the world that is in some ways skewed, and that's not the whole world. I mean, it's just some place in me where the world has entered and it doesn't quite work. It is that tension that, you know, it kind of produces this, if you work with the tension and stay with it, you know, it produces or brings this voice, gives you your own original voice and a place in the culture that I think we really need and that truly contributes. So it's kind of like getting out of the womb, my family womb, and how just almost impossible it was to do. So I'm just saying, you know, be kind to yourself. Anyway, Zazen, and this is the connection you have to wisdom and stillness, and this is an aspect of staying and remaining still within conditions and allowing the work of wisdom, or prajnaparamita, her clarity and her intelligence, to begin to grow and act with you. And this peace, we are always free, no matter what is happening to us. This place that we're calling the ultimate, and you know, is not separate, and it is that you are the whole thing. You are the whole thing as you. You are not just one beside another, and being that whole thing, the ultimate is not separate from the daily life and the daily fare, but it is, I have experienced as its own place, this place of peace, this place of mystery, this place of freedom. Anyway, so, and Zazen, her connection to wisdom, stillness, coming to zero, and that's what we do. We stay still and we let go of all the stuff that's coming up. And it is through the calling of the name of Avalokiteshvara or Kuan Yin, and in that calling, I see it as the ability to let go. I have learned through my life, day by day, how to let go of these things that I know will seduce me or suck me in to places that are unproductive and places that I know that I really don't want to go. So, so it is the activation of bodhicitta, and bodhicitta is a kind of a, I've taken it from the Tibetan practice, and this is the inner tenderness, your tender heart. And I was happy that it also was related, another of the epithets of bodhicitta is wound, and we are all wounded in some way. So it is this tender place, this tender heart that most of us are reluctant to, this vulnerability to bring out in our day-to-day activities. And it's an important aspect of compassion, the ability to act with compassion, to have empathy for other beings, and kindness, loving kindness for myself, and I'll go into this with the talk, for myself and for all beings. I mean, so, and the celestial ear, my being what I am, this magic elixir of she who hears the cries of the world. And this is our capacity for deep listening. And we think that we're hearing things, but it's only in the breakdown of the obscurations, the things that confuse and cause inner conflict, that if we don't work through these things and come to some kind of, allow them or permit them to transform and teach us, it's really very, very hard to hear accurately and to be able to then respond accurately. And so that is the ear, the ability to hear, and myth and story. And that is Mao Shan, who is one of the, she is the protagonist in one of the stories, and then the Universal Gateway. And the other story is The Devotee and the Innkeeper. I guess that's the title of it. And these are actually a lot of very potent mythology that is that has developed around Kuan Yin. So, and specifically in China and then Japan. The Universal Gateway chapter and 3 stories. And I have questions for you to think about as I'm going through the talk. What value do you see in bodhicitta? And again, that is your vulnerability. How do you express or hold this tender heart? And you don't have to come out and say it, but be honest with yourself, you know, whether this is a fearful place or a place that feels genuine and true for you. How would you define the qualities of being a genuine friend? So much a part of Maoshan, and Maoshan is an original person or mythical figure, a forerunner of Kuan Yin. And how is it that you might work to meet this challenge? What might you change in order to meet this challenge of being this genuine friend? So, and it's up to you. You can think about it, and I will at some point open it, hopefully, if I'm doing this right in here. So, or your comments or questions, but just something for you to think about. Kuan Yin of myth and practices. If they only call her name Bodhisattva of call and response, related to Amitabha Buddha of the red passion and the pure land. A devotee of Kuan Yin's saving power was passing the night at an inn, where the landlord was in the habit of administering drugged wine to the wayfarers who sought his hospitality, stealing into their rooms by night to rob and even murder them. This particular guest, however, was a faithful Buddhist, and he did not touch the wine. Not being drugged, he awoke to find the landlord advancing upon him with knife upraised. But at the very moment came a heavy banging at the front door. Hurriedly withdrawing, the landlord went downstairs and opened the door to find a burly policeman-like individual who politely asked him to convey to one of the guests, the very one he had been at the point of murdering, that an old friend, such and such a name, desired him to drop in the morning. Tremblingly discarding his fell intention, the landlord delivered the message soon after it was light. The wayfarer, though he gave no sign, had no difficulty in recognizing the syllables of the visitor's name as a quotation from the Dharma of Great Compassion. And the policeman-like individual had been Kuan Yin herself, or a being sent by her to protect a good man who had long made a practice of reciting the Dharma. And we actually recite the Dharma of Great Compassion. But, you could say this is what goes around comes around. It's kind of this serendipity or, spontaneity of events. But I really think it's more meaningful than that, how once we are more attentive, how these things actually, that all of these connections are more readily available than how we had felt originally. So what we were able to see when we weren't, practicing compassion and wisdom. So Kuan Yin has not, in an overt way, been a main figure in almost 30 years of practice. Her presence, while important, has never felt central, yet her being flows through me quiet and unnoticed, much like a netherworld stream. Although compassion is an innate part of my particular personality and core to my practice, I have never sought Kuan Yin out, and at times have been resistant to her. The resistance is important, in its own way saving. It has not been a sign of rejection or dislike, more like waiting, or becoming wholly ready to receive her inspiration entirely. In times of tribulation, we search the heart for a deep-seated sense of peace. What to do? What to do? And this peace concerns more than any one of us, for it hints at the abyss, the undivided nature prior to each moment. somewhere in the human predicament, and the more than human predicament, it becomes a question of justice, and the justice of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva field. And this is the field of the under sense. And the under sense as otherness, parts and pieces of ourselves, many times inverted, ashamed, pressed down, problematic, perhaps asking to be known. It's also interesting that sometimes our most positive elements, parts of our personality, are held in the shadows. So it's also something good to think about. There is a tendency, especially in the West, in both the individual and collective psyche, to reduce this question to opposites of good and evil, right and wrong, adequate and inadequate, being and non-being, of having or not having, or for and against. I mean, so we create this kind of duality. Myth and imagination as an image or story which erupts into a life, abrupt and with surprise, yet naturally as a piece of organic life. As a bodhisattva, Kuan Yin, through her many and varied stories, can help foster a new attitude, where even mere knowledge of her attendance is helpful in response to an impasse. So we just know that she's there, and just that memory, helps us drop our concerns. It is through the calling of her name, the chanting itself, the calling as the expression of the intimacy of the 10,000 beautiful things, which inspires the inner work of compassion, which heals a life. This vitality in relation to an imaginal figure can supersede our wants or expectations in the day-to-day world. Times when we feel ill at ease and troubled, when we are apt to question our ability not to be biased, and we label it good or bad, and in truth, it has no bias at all. It is just what's happening. We can recognize and let unhelpful feeling thoughts be on their way. Imagination felt through the 10,000 beautiful things of our world, how things are just as they are, and yet overflow. They are more than what they are, and filled with promise. We live beyond not getting what we want, or getting what we do not want. And so much of the time, we do not even need or want what we think we want. And it's not just being conciliatory. I was thinking about the fact that some of the things that are happening with our president, really remind us of what is at stake and help us reorient or reevaluate our lives. This does not preclude speaking up and or meeting a situation honorably, that how we meet circumstance makes a difference, or the fact that positive events also contribute to the annihilation of a self or the sense of a separate self. So it's not just the negatives, it's also the positives, this positive influx that helps you let go of concerns that you have had. And this depends on a relationship with meditation, awareness, and freedom. Repeatedly coming back, always coming back to a place that we recognize as home. And this home is actually this place of kind of just being present, just being at ground zero, just doing what I'm doing, whatever that is. What washes away in the shadows? And this is a question I have held for the past few years. It was the question that I had even doing my Koji training. Why, where, and under what particular circumstance do we subtly attach to and create a separate self-nature? Where is the impetus when we know, and we do, the phenomena are impermanent, they're interdependent, and therefore there is no possibility of a separate self-nature? Maybe it is the difference between tribulations experienced as a natural part of being alive and tribulations we identify with me or because of me. Karma as passing memory, the unfolding of events remembered and re-experienced as places I have lived in this regard. So as you practice, you learn, oh, this happens, that happens. And when it repeats, and it surely will repeat, until it's resolved, it will repeat. These things come back up like little ghosts or memories, and you just say, okay. And you're able to let them go because you know them now. You know that it's nothing to be afraid of. And so the practice to name and recognize all the different emotion thoughts, these little worlds that come up in relation to this dilemma that I am. And I just say, I know you. I've been here before, and I'm learning not to be fooled. And a tightening around a particular situation, entangled in a perceived sense of fault or wrong, perhaps a regression into old conditions. Karma, when we are all caught up, momentarily disconnected, held fast within a narrowed view. Yet karma is creative and helpful, spontaneously arriving as an emanation of Kuan Yin. Suffering or a fall does not betray badness or even a lack of trust. Learning to stay, learning to wait, through holding this tension, stimulates healing, youth and renewal, happiness as an aspect of the wounding or the wound itself. And the wound as memory, deep memory of past lives. All of these, I love to think of the images or the life of the dead that are within me. The image of Kuan Yin as deep memory, she points us toward this eternal moment. So we cannot go back in time, reclaim lost youth, absolve guilt and regret of seemingly lost promise, but we can go forward. We can come full circle. And when we do, everything somehow is healed inside. And I can't explain why. And there actually won't be any feeling of guilt and regret anymore. We can embrace the potential and vitality of new life and renewed youth through the appearance of an inner connection to an image, like the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin, and again this bodhicitta in a deeper sense, encouraging us to come back to ground zero, to find happiness with things just as they are. And this is the story of Mao Shan. It's a story I really love. This is an early, a very early primal version of Kuan Yin. There are many, many different versions of this story. It's kind of a Cinderella story. I wouldn't have believed it was Buddhist, but so it seems to be. So it says. So the story of Mao Shan. The story of Mao Shan, a young princess sequestered by a cruel and overprotective father who was a usurper to the throne, a Cinderella story of sorts, is one of the most varied and popular, originating with folk culture in China. Mao Shan could be considered precursor, an early embodiment of the character of Kuan Yin. And she begins as a goddess with shamanic qualities, originally woman and snake, finding kinship to the animals and trees, speaking with and tending all beings. She conversed with tigers and tiger lilies alike. Mao Shan is connected with the moon and the sea, dragonflies, poetic reverie, plants and animals, the elements, each having its own language and atmosphere. It is said that her father, wanting a son, demanded that Mao Shan marry, and she refuses, as she was inclined to follow her own path. Her father, seeking to bend her will impose difficulties, forcing her to clean the palace stables, to work with palace slaves, concubines, and criminals. Through her predicament, she discovered deep empathy with others, keep kinship with those in distress, whom she did all she could to support. So she takes whatever is difficult and she's able to turn it into a space of learning. She held an aspiration to practice austerities and to serve. She longed for deep silence, and she wondered about the nature of the Bodhisattva's heart. And Mao Shan pleaded with her father as she wanted to enter a convent, and when he refused and attempted to stop her, she left the palace of her own accord. Again her father intruded, attempting to lure her back, demanding the nuns make her life a living hell. And fearful of the king and his possible retribution, the nuns complied. She was given a tiny, barren, windowless cell with only a cold stone floor to sleep, instructed to wash the last speck of gray dust from the old stone walls, almost blinded by the sharp specks raining down with each swipe of her brush. But she persevered. She was ordered to do garbage duty each morning and every evening. She cleaned latrines and animal pens, and finally was instructed, fatigued or not, to tend to the many sick and dying old nuns. She found through her suffering an opportunity for learning. Not only did she learn about medicinal poultices, energy points, and herbs to heal the bodies of sick and dying nuns, but through her trials she learned to cleanse her own heart. Drawing pus from dying nuns, rampant bed sores, she began to sing to them of the Dharma field, the Brahmaloka abode of the Dharma kings. Pure Land, where the ideal conditions for practice and fruition were a glimpse of something wondrous beyond their long sickness and the ravages of old age. When any of the old nuns died, Mao Shan gently washed their bodies, singing to them of their own true nature. Much of the mythology around Kuan Yin points to her inclination as a goddess of mercy and sorrow, bearing the burden of suffering beings and holding silence. To dwell faithfully in one's true nature is to be open to the four great abodes, the Brahma Vihara, known as the four states of divine dwelling: compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, and sympathetic joy, qualities which can't merely be learned, but can be cultivated in practice through the breaking down of obscurations. They are qualities natural to us, yet they come to life by meeting and working through tendencies of the discriminative mind toward one-sidedness, divisiveness, and conflict. Genuine love heals, even when immersed in the realm of contradictions and negativity, to reveal a more grounded aspect of deep listening. So it is in the contradictions that we really have an opportunity to see more clearly and to listen more deeply. We work to see an issue from many different sides, to stand in another's shoes, to meet others halfway. First, to look closely at our own response, to explore our own side of any issue with clarity, without negative judgment or blame. How am I attached in some way to this issue, which is not always negative? And Kuan Yin's empathy moves through us to do the real work of the heart, which takes fortitude and courage, and is not simply sentimentality. It's not something added, it's not something I think I should do. It's really something that comes from deep within me that feels true of what I know I need to do. Kindness and compassion is a basis of who we are, which can be cultivated in relation to circumstance, and it is not an addition. It is not made up of I should. And the work of the heart, our sincerity fosters a genuine friendship to our world and to ourselves, opening us more completely to her influence. Loving kindness, metta, includes kindness to ourselves as well as toward others. So when something comes up and we feel uncomfortable about it, we are gentle and kind, in recognizing it and not beating ourselves up or beating somebody else up. So I love this story of Mao Shan, and through her I have come to know Kuan Yin and recognized many aspects of myself in her struggle. There are many versions of the story of Mao Shan, and it is considered the most widespread and core teaching of Kuan Yin's evolution as a bodhisattva. It is interesting that the bodhisattva, like ourselves, also has an evolution and a history, and she changes in relation to us and our world. And there's a last part, and I want to make sure that I do that because that is the universal gateway and some of the aspects of the chant. So the bodhisattva is an enlightening being, one who practices the Buddha way to save all beings. All accepting Kanzeon is the gateway to Buddha mind. In Kanzeon, we are one with Buddha in cause and effect, related to all Buddhas, to dharma and sangha. Our true nature is eternal, joyous, selfless, and pure. And bodhicitta, again, is a Sanskrit term for the thought of enlightenment. And bodhicitta is our genuine and kind heart, and our willingness to be touched by people, by life, by puppies, So at that time, the bodhisattva, inexhaustible mind, rose up from his seat, humbly bared his right shoulder, placed his palms together toward the Buddha, and said, "World-honored one, for what reason is the bodhisattva hearer of the cries of the world, called hearer of the cries of the world?" And the Buddha answered, the bodhisattva, inexhaustible mind, "Good son, there are innumerable hundreds of thousands of millions of living beings who are suffering in pain and distress. If they hear of this bodhisattva hearer of the cries of the world, single-mindedly call her name, then the bodhisattva hearer of cries of the world will immediately regard that sound and emancipate them all. Suppose those who keep the name of bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world are engulfed in raging fire. It will not be able to burn them, owing to that bodhisattva's majestic powers. Suppose they are carried away by flood. If only they call out her name, they will immediately reach a shallow place. Suppose hundreds and thousands of millions of living beings, searching for gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, agate, coral, amber, pearls, and other treasures, go out on the ocean, and a black gale blows their ships ashore on the land of the Rakshasa demons. Even if a single person calls out the name of the bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world, all these people will be rescued from the clutches of the Rakshasas. For this reason she is called, she who hears the cries of the world. Bodhisattva infinite thought, ask a question in verse. World-honored one of wondrous form, I inquire again of that Buddha child, what are the causes of her name regarding the cries of the world? There is an entire range of mythology, stories that have evolved around the career of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. And this is Kanzeon of the sea, Kanzeon of dragons. In the wilderness she is like Lady of the Beasts. She appears in every guise to beings according to their need. Even if a single person calls her name, all beings in times of trouble will be saved. To touch and permit ourselves to be touched, which seems difficult enough. Yet this is a form of generosity. We make tea, we meet and show up for one another. Moment by moment, her 1,000 hands, her 1,000 eyes, Kuan Yin, her 1,000 possibilities she offers. Truth has many faces. As we see things, so things are. As you expect things, so things come. Why? Because your mind makes them so. What we dedicate our lives to is who we become, devoted and of tender heart. And we are always free, not of difficulty or happening, but through our response, how we respond to whatever is happening. And yet it has to be real, so you have to do the work of it. And the work is not always easy. It's actually never easy. In terms of character and function, and this is our difference, the form of practice is equal because it is different, nurturing a particular quality of experience through which we can contribute. And this makes for true community. Many different people who have learned many different things through their practice. That becomes a rich and varied and true community. And nevertheless, in the magic of a dream, we can only become who we truly are. How will I participate in its unfolding? And I will just read some of this. The honored one of wondrous form replied to verse in infinite thought, listen to the deeds of Kanzeon, who aptly responds in every quarter. With vast pledge as deep as oceans, throughout kalpas beyond reckoning, she served many thousands of millions of Buddhas, bringing forth this great pure vow. For you I explain it briefly, hearing the name or seeing the form of Kanzeon, with mindful remembrance is not in vain, for the woes of existence can thus be relieved. Even if someone with harmful intent should push you in a fiery pit, by mindfully invoking Kanzeon's power, the pit of fire will turn into a pool. If drifting in a vast sea menaced by dragons, fish, or demons, by mindfully invoking Kanzeon's power, the billowing waves cannot drown you. If from Mount Sumeru's lofty peak someone were to throw you down, by mindfully invoking Kanzeon's power, like the sun you would stand firm in the sky. If pursued by wicked men down from Diamond Peak, by mindfully invoking Kanzeon's power, they could not harm a single hair. For the wondrous voice of Kanzeon, Brahma voice, voice of the rolling tides, surpasses every sound within the world. Therefore ever keep it in mind. In each thought, with never a doubt, Kanzeon, pure sage, in pain, agony, and death's distress, can provide a sure support. Fully endowed with all virtues, her eye of compassion beholds all beings, assembling a boundless ocean of happiness. Thus, with reverence, you should make prostrations. Thus, as earth holder, Bodhisattva arose from his or her seat, went before the Buddha and said, O world-honored one, those living beings who hear these verses on Kanzeon, their benefits will not be slight. And the same for those people who hear her deeds, of her manifestation of a universal gateway and her supernatural powers. When the Buddha taught this universal gateway chapter, and all 84,000 beings in the assembly aroused the thought of unsurpassed and complete and perfect enlightenment. That's my talk for today. So I don't know, I think we don't have time for questions again. So I'm sorry, but I'm learning to do this. It goes this way and that's part of the process. But I'm here if you'd like to ask questions, or if you have thought of some of those questions that I posed to you about bodhicitta and how we relate to bodhicitta and this important idea about friendship.